volcano awakens in Iceland. A mountain erupts, belching millions of tons of ash into the sky.
Something unusual is happening now in Iceland. In recent years, strong earthquakes and volcanic eruptions have occurred one after another in this country. According to the Icelandic Meteorological Office and geologists, this is not just normal volcanic activity. This is part of a very long geological cycle that may continue for many generations. And what's surprising is we're not just talking about a few years here. It could possibly last for 200 to 400 years. This means that children being born now in Iceland will likely still experience the same volcanic activity even when they grow old. And even their grandchildren and the next generations may face the same situation. But why is this happening? Why does it seem like the lava keeps flowing and the ground keeps shaking in this country? The answer lies right beneath Iceland. But before we start the discussion, I'd like to ask you for a like, and please subscribe to our channel as well. This is a huge help for us content creators. So, let's get started. This is not just an ordinary island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. This is one of the unique places in the world where two massive tectonic plates of the Earth meet directly. On one side is the North American plate, and on the other side is the Eurasian plate. They slowly move apart every year. Their movement is very slow. It's almost as slow as the rate at which our fingernails grow. But even though it's that slow, it has a huge impact beneath the ground. As the two plates move apart, a gap forms in the Earth's crust. And from the very hot part of the mantle, magma rises to fill the new space. When the magma cools, it becomes new rock. In this way, the Earth's crust gradually increases. This is how the very long mid-Atlantic ridge was formed, the longest mountain range on the entire planet. It is more than 16,000 kilometers long. The only difference is that almost all of it lies beneath the sea. But when it comes to Iceland, it's different, because this ridge suddenly rises until it emerges above the ocean. And this is where the unique story of this country begins. But what else is hidden beneath Iceland? In fact, there is another, even stronger force at work under Iceland. It's not just the separation of tectonic plates. Tectonic plates are the reason why Iceland is so active, but there's another big reason. And that is the whole country sits right on top of a mantle hotspot. What exactly is this? It's a part inside the Earth where it's hotter than the usual rocks in the mantle. And because it's so hot, rocks melt more easily and turn into magma. More magma accumulates. There's a greater chance for earthquakes to occur. And there's a higher possibility of strong volcanic eruptions. It's like two different machines pushing upward at the same place at the same time. That's why it's no surprise that Iceland is one of the most active volcanic regions in the world. According to geologists, the combination of the mid-Atlantic ridge and a mantle hotspot in a single location is extremely rare on Earth. This is also the reason why the island has continued to grow over a very long period of time. While many countries are gradually being eaten away by the sea due to erosion, Iceland continues to create new land. New land from fire that comes from deep within the planet. Despite this, if you think about it, the Earth is actually very old. Our planet is estimated to be over 4 billion years old. But if you compare that to Iceland, it's like a newborn part of the world. From the perspective of geologists, this country is still very young. According to studies by the Icelandic Meteorological Office and geologists, the oldest rocks in Iceland are found in the West Fjords and eastern East Fjords. Their age is only about 16 to 18 million years. That may seem like a very long time to us, but in the history of the Earth, that's almost like just yesterday. To give you an idea, many parts of mainland Europe have rocks that are over 500 million years old. That means there's a huge gap compared to Iceland. And as you go further south in the country, the land gets even younger. In the Reykjanes Peninsula, many parts of the land were formed only within the last 3 to 7 million years. In the world of geology, that's still very young. That means nature's work in this country isn't finished yet. Even now, volcanoes continue to reshape it. One of the best examples of this is the small island of Surtsey. In 1963, there was no island in that part of the Atlantic Ocean. There was only sea. Then a volcano began to erupt under the ocean. Little by little, lava rose from the depths. It cooled as it mixed with the seawater. And in just a few years, a new island was born. It was as if a new piece of the world suddenly appeared from the sea. Because scientists knew the exact time when Surtsey was formed, they made it a very important natural laboratory. Ordinary people are strictly prohibited from entering here. This was done to avoid disturbing the natural emergence of life. Over the years, birds gradually arrived. Then the wind brought seeds of plants. Gradually, grasses, moss, insects, and other forms of life also increased. Because of this, scientists saw how an ecosystem begins in a place that was once just pure rock and lava. This is one of the few places in the world where the formation of an entire ecosystem has been observed almost from the very first day. But Iceland's youth comes with a price. When the land is still young, it means the cracks beneath it are still fresh. The movement of magma is more active, volcanic eruptions happen more frequently, and strong earthquakes also occur more often. According to the Icelandic Meteorological Office, there are around 30 active volcanic systems throughout the country. It's not easy to determine the exact number. Some volcanic systems have only one large volcano, but there are also very long chains of fissures underground that can erupt in different areas. Some have also been quiet for hundreds of years before becoming active again. So depending on how geologists count, there may be between 28 and 33 major active volcanic systems. In the last 10,000 years, more than 100 volcanoes have erupted in Iceland. This is one of the highest numbers in all of Europe. And because of the country's unique location, almost all types of volcanic eruptions can be observed. Here you can see volcanoes that slowly release thin lava that flows for many kilometers. There are also volcanoes that suddenly erupt and throw a huge cloud of ash into the sky. There are also eruptions that happen right along long cracks in the ground instead of just on a single mountain. There are also large calderas that form after a huge amount of magma is emptied from beneath the ground. In other words, Iceland is like a huge classroom for scientists who want to study almost every type of volcano in the world. But despite all these dangers, most of the people of Iceland still live here. But why? Because the climate is not the same throughout the country. The central part of Iceland is mostly mountains, lava fields, ice, and vast volcanic deserts. This place is very cold almost all year round. Only a few people live here. On the other hand, the conditions are better along the coasts, especially in the southwestern part of the country. This is thanks to the Gulf Stream, a warm ocean current in the Atlantic Ocean. Because of this, many ports don't freeze as much even during winter, and it's also easier to fish in the oceans around Iceland. And because fish, especially cod, are abundant, many communities began to prosper here. As the population grew, the towns also expanded. There were more roads, more houses, more hospitals, and more schools. And eventually it became the center of the entire country's economy. At present, a large part of Iceland's population lives near Reykjavik and its neighboring areas. Most of the country's important infrastructure can also be found here. But fish is not the only gift that nature has given to Iceland. They also learned to use the heat that comes from beneath the ground. Instead of relying on coal or large amounts of fossil fuels, Iceland uses geothermal energy. According to official data from Iceland, more than 85% of the houses in the country are heated using geothermal water. From underground, the extremely hot water is brought up using deep wells. Afterwards, it is sent to houses, buildings, swimming pools, and even to some roads to melt the ice during winter. In other words, the same heat that can cause destructive volcanic eruptions is also what provides comfortable and clean energy to millions of people. But as cities grow and infrastructure increases, the risk also becomes greater because now more people are living in areas that could be affected by the next volcanic eruption. And what's more concerning is that this isn't a risk that might happen hundreds of years from now. According to geologists, there are signs of new magma movement beneath the Reykjanes Peninsula. And the next chapter of this story will begin, not in the distant future, but right beneath people's feet. For many years, the Reykjanes Peninsula seemed quiet. There were still occasional earthquakes, but there were no signs that a major change was coming until the latter part of 2019, when earthquakes suddenly began to increase around Fagradalsfjall. At first, only a few were felt, but as the weeks went by, there were almost daily tremors, and they gradually became stronger. According to the Icelandic Meteorological Office, by early 2021, more than 40,000 earthquakes had been recorded in just a few weeks in the same region. This is not a normal earthquake, nor is it a major earthquake followed by aftershocks. This is what geologists call a seismic swarm. In this situation, thousands of small and moderate earthquakes occur one after another without a single clear main earthquake. For ordinary people, experiencing this is frightening. But for scientists, it is a very important warning. When this kind of seismic swarm happens in Iceland, there is usually a major change happening underground. In many cases, this is a sign that magma is moving. But how does this happen? Imagine the Earth's crust like a thick piece of glass. As the extremely hot magma from the mantle continues to push upward, it looks for the weakest part of the rock. When it finds a small crack, it forces the crack wider. As the crack grows, the number of tremors also increases, but the volcano doesn't erupt right away. Instead, it's like the magma is slowly inserting itself into the crust. As more magma enters, the pressure increases. When the rocks can no longer withstand this force, that's when an eruption occurs. That's exactly what happened in Iceland. In March 2021, after several months of consecutive earthquakes, a long crack finally opened in the ground at Fagradalsfjall. Instead of a large mountain erupting, a long fissure opened up. From there, lava continuously flowed out. According to scientists, the first fissure that opened was approximately 180 meters long. The whole valley looked like a river of fire. Many residents saw this kind of eruption for the first time in their entire lives. According to Icelandic authorities, this is also the first volcanic eruption in the Reykjanes Peninsula, after about 800 years of silence. But that was not the end. In fact, that was just the beginning. After the eruption stopped after almost 6 months, many people hoped that the problem was over. But that assumption was wrong. In 2022, there was another eruption. Then it erupted again in 2023. Over time, geologists noticed that the magma activity was shifting to other parts of the Reykjanes Peninsula. It slowly moved toward the area of Surtsey. This is where the situation started to become serious. On November 10, 2023, according to the Icelandic Civil Protection, almost the entire town of Grindavik was evacuated. More than 3,700 residents had to leave their homes. Not because there was already an eruption, but because scientists saw a massive magma intrusion passing directly beneath the town. In other words, there is a huge amount of magma moving deep underground, and at any moment, it could find a way out. Just a few days after the evacuation, many cracks opened up right inside Grindavik. Some houses were damaged. Deep fissures appeared on the roads. Some water pipes and other important infrastructure were also damaged. According to Reuters and Icelandic authorities, this is one of the biggest natural disasters Iceland has experienced in many decades. Up to now, there are still only a few permanent residents in Grindavik because the risk of another eruption remains high. But for geologists, there is something more important that they have noticed. It's not just that a volcano has awakened. They believe that a very long geological cycle has started again, one that last happened during the time of the Vikings. And this is where history becomes extremely important. When the Norse settlers first arrived in Iceland in 874 AD, they diligently recorded important events. In their old records and sagas, there are stories about fire coming out of the sea in darkness, even at noon. For many centuries, others thought these were just legends. But when modern geologists studied the old lava flows, volcanic ash layers, and sediments around Reykjanes, they noticed that many details matched what the Vikings had written. Studies by the Iceland Geosurvey and other research institutions showed that there was a series of major eruptions in Reykjanes between 1210 and 1240. This period is now called the Reykjanes fires. It wasn't just a single eruption that happened back then. The eruptions occurred one after another and lasted for many decades. Because of this, vast grazing lands were destroyed, farmers struggled, and many livestock died due to ash and lack of food. That was a huge challenge for the first settlers in Iceland. But these old events became even more important when scientists studied the deeper history of the land. Under the lakes and layers of soil in Iceland, there are thin layers of volcanic ash. To ordinary people, these just look like simple ash. But in the laboratory, each layer has its own chemical signature. The amounts of silica, iron, magnesium, calcium, and other minerals are different, like a fingerprint for each volcano. By analyzing these ash layers and using radiocarbon dating on the soil above and below them, scientists can determine exactly when ancient eruptions happened. According to a study published by the Iceland Geosurvey in March 2020, they found that this is not the first time the Reykjanes Peninsula has awakened. In the last 4,000 years, there have been several periods of intense volcanic activity. Each cycle lasts for several hundred years, then it weakens again, and after about 800 to 1,000 years, a new cycle begins again. This is why geologists are now seriously studying the current situation. Not because they know exactly what will happen next, but because the events they are seeing now closely match the patterns seen before. And if their interpretation is correct, this may not be just a temporary series of eruptions. This could be the beginning of a new phase of activity that could possibly continue for a very long time. During the Viking era, when the ground split open and fire came out, there was almost nothing they could do except avoid it, pray, and try to survive. But Iceland is very different now. They have satellites, GPS stations, earthquake sensors, and scientists who monitor the movement of the ground almost in real time. And there are engineers who are literally building walls to stop the lava. According to the Icelandic Meteorological Office, before some parts of Reykjanes erupted, there were areas where the ground rose because of the accumulating magma underneath. This isn't easily noticeable to the eye, but with the help of GPS and satellite radar, scientists can see which parts of the ground are swelling, sinking, or moving. When the ground suddenly rises, it means that pressure is building up underneath. It's like a balloon that's slowly being filled with air. As more magma accumulates underneath, it pushes the ground upward. When this is accompanied by thousands of small earthquakes, the picture becomes even clearer. Geologists can see where the magma is passing through, how deep it is, how big it is, and whether it is possible for it to reach the surface. This doesn't mean that they know the exact time of the eruption. No scientist can say perfectly what minute the ground will crack open, but they can see the warning signs. And in Iceland, every hour of early warning is very important. Because once the lava starts to flow, it can't just be stopped. It's not like a flood that can subside quickly. It's also not like a fire that can be put out with water. Lava is molten rock, extremely hot and heavy. And when it keeps flowing, it can cover roads, destroy pipes, swallow up land, and cut off the way to a town. So Iceland's strategy is not just to predict when the volcano will erupt. More importantly, it's to find out where the lava will go once it comes out. This is where the engineers come in. They use computer models to study the shape of the land. They look at where the terrain slopes downward, where the lava might flow, where it could slow down, and where barriers should be placed to divert it away from houses, roads, power plants, or water pipelines. According to Reuters and Icelandic authorities, After the residents of Grindavik evacuated in November 2023, building protective barriers around important areas became even more important. The purpose of these walls is not to defeat the volcano. Lava isn't that easy to handle. The real goal is simpler: to slow it down, divert it, and buy time. Even just a few extra hours make a big difference. People can be evacuated, equipment can be moved, dangerous roads can be closed, the power plant and hot water supply can be protected. In a country that relies on geothermal energy, this is very important, because when the pipelines and power stations are damaged, it's not just homes that are affected. Heating is affected too. Electricity is affected, water is affected, the whole community is affected. But not all lava is the same. Some lava is thick, slow, and has a rough surface. There is also lava that is thinner, moves more smoothly, and flows more easily to the lower parts of the ground. According to the USGS, the shape and angle of the barrier play a big role in the movement of lava. If the wall is placed incorrectly, lava may accumulate, rise, and overflow. But if the angle is correct, there's a greater chance that its flow can be diverted to a safer area. This is why simply piling up soil is not enough. Engineers need to know the direction of the flow. They need to know the speed. They need to know the thickness. And they need to act before the lava reaches the critical area. In Reykjanes, the barriers were made using soil, gravel, rocks, and materials from the surrounding area itself. Sometimes, while they were being built, the lava was already close. This means the crews are working knowing that at any moment the lava flow could change direction. This is not an ordinary construction project. This is a race against time and against the forces of the earth itself. But the initial experiments showed that there is hope, even if they can't stop the entire eruption. They can change the route of the lava in some instances. They can protect some parts of the infrastructure, and they can give people more time to escape. This is where modern Iceland differs from Iceland during the time of the Vikings. Back then, an eruption was just fate. When the lava came, you just had to run. Now it is being monitored from space. It is measured using sensors. Computer models are used, and it is blocked using man-made walls. But no matter how smart the technology is, there is still a clear limitation. Humans cannot command a volcano to stop. No machine can stop the separation of tectonic plates. And no engineer can close the deep cracks beneath Reykjanes. All they can do is get ahead of the danger, read the movement of the earth, prepare the people, and divert the fire before it reaches the heart of a town. So while the magma continues to move beneath Iceland, this country's fight is not just about survival. It's about how far modern humans can keep up with a force that's older, stronger, and deeper than any city we've ever built on top of it. With every new eruption, Iceland learns something new, and each new lesson is immediately used for the next challenge. This is why their lava defenses get bigger and better every year. According to Icelandic authorities, after the next eruption in the Reykjanes Peninsula, they started building very long protective barriers around the most important areas in the country. This is no longer just a simple pile of soil. This has become a massive engineering project. Some of the barriers stretch for several kilometers. Others are almost 24 meters high. These are so huge that new quarries had to be opened just to have enough stones and gravel for the construction. The materials used are not ordinary either. Most of the barriers are made of densely packed basalt gravel because it is more durable against extreme heat and the weight of lava. On the outside, large rocks are placed to prevent it from collapsing easily. The shape and angle of each barrier are also carefully chosen. Their purpose is not just to block. It's more important to control the direction of the lava. When engineers know where the flow of molten rock will naturally go, they can guide it toward a safer area. It's like directing a raging flood. You can't stop the water, but you can divert it so it doesn't hit the houses. The same principle applies to lava. One of the most important things the barriers protect is the Surtsey geothermal power station. This facility is very important to Iceland. A large portion of the geothermal energy and hot water used by many communities comes from here. If this is damaged, it won't just affect one town. The electricity, heating system, and hot water supply in a wide area could be affected. That's why the government makes it a big priority to defend this. But no matter how big the barriers are, you can't completely close off the whole area. There still need to be passageways for vehicles. There are pipelines that need to pass through. Emergency vehicles must be able to enter at any time. Because of this, there are special openings in some parts of the barrier. On normal days, these are open. But according to the Icelandic Civil Protection, equipment is also ready to quickly close these openings if there is a threat of an eruption. Within just a few hours, the entire defense can be changed depending on the situation. The work doesn't end even when the eruption stops. In fact, that's when a new round of assessment begins. Scientists update their computer models. They determine where the lava flowed, where the barrier was effective, and where it needed to be raised. And where a new defense should be built. Then the whole process is repeated when there's a new eruption. There's another round of assessment and new construction. Another adjustment. This is an ongoing battle that can last for a very long time. The good news, according to reports from Icelandic authorities, is that many of their prediction models have been effective. In some instances, the computer simulation almost matched the actual path of the lava. Because of this, they are able to make decisions more quickly about where to send heavy equipment and which barrier needs to be raised. But no matter how advanced the technology is, there are still times when you have to make choices. Not everything can be saved. One clear example of this is the Blue Lagoon. This is one of the most famous tourist destinations in Iceland. During the eruptions in late 2024, lava reached some areas around it. There were areas that were sacrificed in order to save more important infrastructure. According to Reuters and Icelandic authorities, the main purpose of the new barriers is to protect the geothermal power station and the main buildings. The parking area is not a priority. It's easier to replace vehicles than to lose a geothermal plant that supplies energy to so many people. This shows that during disasters, difficult decisions have to be made. Not all property can be saved. But there is one problem that even the highest barrier cannot stop. When a new fissure opens right under a town, this is the greatest limitation of all defenses. If magma rises directly under houses and roads, no barrier can stop it. This is why Iceland's preparations are not just focused on building walls. They are also continuously improving their entire infrastructure. They have plans to move some transmission lines to safer locations. Some pipelines are buried deep in solid rock. Some main roads have been redesigned to make it easier to have alternative routes in case of an eruption. As technology advances, researchers are also using artificial intelligence to find alternatives more quickly. As technology advances, researchers are also using artificial intelligence. This is the massive amount of data from satellites, GPS stations, seismic sensors, and the biggest limitation is that even with all this, it's still difficult to predict the exact timing of the next eruption, but it helps to detect possible signs of an eruption more quickly. But it helps to identify patterns that people might not immediately notice. Because events like what happened in Iceland can happen easily, many countries are looking for alternatives. According to volcanologists and disaster experts, it's rare in history for a modern country to have to live in the middle of an ongoing volcanic crisis while still keeping its economy and cities running. If Iceland's measures succeed, it could serve as a model for other countries with active volcanoes in the future. But in the end, one truth is clear. Humans can never stop the movement of the Earth. We can't stop the tectonic plates. We can't command the magma to stop. All we can do is study nature, understand its warnings, and use science to lessen the damage. For thousands of years, Iceland has been shaped by fire coming from deep within the planet, and it looks like this won't end anytime soon. As the new Reykjanes volcanic cycle continues, Iceland will face a challenge that may last not just for a few years, but for many decades.
Hindi lang ng ilang taon, kundi ng maraming.
This is not a simple story about a volcano. This is the story of a nation that is trying to keep up with one of the most powerful forces in nature. And with every new eruption, one thing is proven again and again. Humans may not be able to control the Earth, but with the help of science, preparation, and the right decisions, we can save more lives while the world we live in continues to move.